The first time Elena lifted her camera at me, I thought she was just killing time. A rich family's daughter, back in town for a few weeks, bored enough to watch the hired help sweat in the backyard. That was the story I told myself while I balanced a paint bucket near the cabin and tried not to look up. Then the shutter clicked. Not once. Twice. I turned my head, annoyed, and caught her standing under the cabin's porch overhang, rain misting the air around her like a soft curtain. She had this old film camera in her hands and a calm look on her face, like she wasn't taking pictures of a stranger at all. Like she was capturing something she didn't want to lose. "You taking photos of me?" I asked, keeping my voice light, but my chest was tight. Elena lowered the camera slowly. "Not you," she said. "Your hands." That made my throat go dry. I glanced down at my hands. They were nothing special. Rough knuckles, dirt under the nails, paint on my fingertips, a small cut on my index finger from a cedar slat that fought back. Hands that built fences and carried drywall. Hands that never got complimented unless someone wanted a discount. "My hands?" I repeated, like I heard her wrong. She stepped closer, not too close, but close enough that I could smell coffee and wet wool. "Yeah," she said. "They look like they tell the truth." I didn't know what to say to that, so I did what I always do when I don't know what to say. I went back to work. My name's Aiden. I'm 23, and I do construction in a small town outside Aspen, Colorado. Not the shiny ski resort Aspen people brag about online. The quieter stretch of town where the roads are gravel and the diner still serves burgers the same way they did when my dad was a kid. I rent a one-room apartment above a hardware store. Cheap. Loud at night. Smells faintly like paint thinner no matter what I do. Every morning I hop on my beat-up mountain bike and pedal 3 miles to my uncle's yard. 9 hours of hauling, measuring, cutting, and building. Then I ride home, eat soup from a can, and do it again. I'm not chasing a big dream. I'm not the kind of guy who talks about goals at a bar. I like simple. I like work that makes sense. Measure twice, cut once, build something solid, go to sleep tired. My uncle says I'm better with my hands than he ever was. That's his way of saying I'm not great with words. He's not wrong. A couple weeks ago, he put me on a renovation job for the Whitmores, an older couple with a nice place in the better part of town. They had a small cabin in the backyard that used to belong to Mrs. Whitmore's mom. It sat behind a grove of pine trees like a secret, empty for years, quiet in the sad way. The cabin needed a new porch, new floorboards, and a new fence. My uncle trusted me to handle it solo. I liked that. Less talking, more working. The first 2 days were exactly how I wanted them. I showed up at dawn, tore out rotted boards, reset posts, and laid out fresh cedar planks. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore checked in once, nodded, thanked me, and left. No hovering, no questions. Then came day 3. I was carrying a bucket of paint through the yard when a voice called from the main house porch. "Careful," it said. "That gate swings shut with the wind. Could clip your foot." I looked up fast, nearly dropping the paint. Elena was leaning against the doorframe like she'd been there a while. Dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Oversized gray sweater. Faded jeans. No jewelry, no makeup. Just this quiet presence that made the whole yard feel different. "I didn't see you," I said, brushing my hands on my work pants. She gave a small smile. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you. I'm Elena. The Whitmores are my parents. I'm here for a couple weeks." "Aiden," I said, nodding. "I'm fixing the cabin." "I figured," she replied, eyes flicking to the lumber stack. "Looks like you're doing it alone." "Yeah," I said. "That's how I like it." Elena studied me for a second like she was deciding what to do with my answer. Then she said, "Okay, just didn't want you losing a toe." She disappeared back inside before I could respond. That night I told myself she was nothing. Just the client's daughter. Someone passing through. But the next morning she showed up again. I was halfway through sinking a post when I heard gravel crunch behind me. I didn't turn, assuming it was Mr. Whitmore. "Morning," Elena said. I looked over and saw her holding 2 mugs of coffee like she'd been doing it her whole life. Her hair was down today, catching the early light. She wore a flannel shirt and boots that looked like they'd actually touched dirt before. "Thought you might need this," she said, offering one. I took it, and our fingers brushed for half a second. My pulse jumped like I'd touched a live wire. "Thanks," I muttered. "Don't get used to it," she said with a low laugh. "I just had extra." I tried to act normal, but my focus was shot. She leaned against a pine tree, watching me work like it was something worth watching. "You work like you're sure of every move," she said. "It's just a fence," I replied. "Still," she said, "it's calming." A few days after that, she started bringing lemonade, then lunches, sandwiches she made herself, apples sliced with cinnamon. Little things that felt too personal to be a polite gesture. She asked about my tools, why I measured the way I did, how I knew a board was straight just by looking at it. I answered in short sentences, because that's what I do, but she listened like my words mattered. One afternoon, rain rolled in fast, turning the yard dark and damp. I kept painting anyway, stubborn and stupid. Elena sat on the cabin steps under the overhang, watching me through the mist. The shutter clicked again. I looked up. "You really taking pictures of me?" Elena lifted the camera slightly, then lowered it. "Not you," she said again, softer this time. "Your hands." I stared at her, confused. She stood and walked toward me, boots sinking in wet grass. The rain dotted her hair and sweater. She didn't seem to care. "I'm a photographer," she said, voice steady. "I shoot people all the time. But most of them are trying to look like something. They pose. They hide." She held up the camera, then lowered it again like she was nervous now. "You don't," she continued. "You're just working. Your hands don't lie." My throat tightened. I didn't know why a simple sentence hit me like that. I cleared my throat and tried to joke. "So what? You want a close-up of my dirty nails for your art show?" Elena's smile flickered. "Maybe," she said, "but not for a show." She hesitated, then asked the question that changed the air between us. "Can I photograph your hands up close?" she said. "Just your hands. Holding the hammer, holding the brush. I don't know why, but I need to." The rain kept falling. The fence stood half-painted behind me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what the right move was. For a few seconds, I just stared at Elena like she'd asked me to hand her my wallet or my secrets. "Why?" I asked, because that was the only word my mouth could find. Elena didn't rush to fill the silence. She held the camera against her chest like it was something fragile. The rain dotted the leather strap and made her dark hair cling to the side of her face. "I don't know how to explain it without sounding weird," she said. "Your hands look like they've lived a real life." I glanced down again. Paint on my knuckles. A scar across my thumb from a nail gun when I was 18. Calluses that never went away no matter how many times I scrubbed. Hands that didn't belong in a clean place like her Denver world. "It's just work," I muttered. Elena shook her head. "No," she said. "It's more than that. When I look at you working, I feel calm. Like something in me finally stops buzzing." That made my chest tighten, because I knew that buzzing. Mine never stopped either. I just buried it under long days and tired muscles. The rain picked up a little, drumming on the fresh cedar slats. I should have said no. She was my client's daughter. She was older, smarter, and she had a camera pointed at the only thing I'd ever been good at. I should have stayed in my lane. But her eyes weren't playful. They weren't bored. They were honest. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "If it's just my hands." Elena let out a breath like she'd been holding it. "Thank you," she said. We moved under the cabin's overhang where it was dry. The air smelled like wet pine and fresh paint. I set my brush down carefully, like the world might crack if I moved too fast. Elena opened the back of her film camera with practiced fingers, checking the roll. The whole thing seemed old-fashioned and serious, like she cared about every shot. "I'm going to ask you to do a couple things," she said. "Just normal stuff. Hold your hammer, wrap tape around your palm, rest your hands on the fence post." Nothing fancy. I nodded, trying to act like this was normal. It wasn't. She stepped close, angling the camera, her face focused. The way she watched made me feel exposed in a way I'd never felt even standing shirtless in a locker room. "Hold it like you would when you're about to drive a nail," she said. I picked up my hammer and gripped it the way I always did. My hand knew exactly where to place each finger. My wrist relaxed. My knuckles flexed. The shutter clicked. Then clicked again. Elena's eyes narrowed slightly, like she was chasing something she couldn't quite catch. "Now hold the paintbrush," she said. I did. The bristles still damp. My fingers stained light gray from the paint. The rain outside made the lights soft and even, and Elena moved around me like she was studying a map. Click! Click! I couldn't stop thinking about how close she was, how her perfume mixed with the smell of wet wood, how her breath fogged slightly in the cold air. "You always work alone?" she asked without looking up. "Most of the time," I said. "Because you like it, or because it's easier?" she asked. I hesitated. "Both," I admitted. Elena lowered the camera and looked at me. "That's what I thought," she said quietly. My throat went dry. "What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't answer right away. She lifted the camera again. "Rest your hands on the fence post," she said. I did, palms flat on the fresh cedar. My fingers spread like I was testing its strength. The shutter clicked, then stopped. Elena lowered the camera slowly. "It means you carry a lot in silence," she said. "People who like being alone usually learn to be alone." That hit me harder than it should have. I turned my gaze to the yard, to the rain sliding down the slats, to the mountains hidden behind low clouds. "You don't know me," I said. Elena's voice softened. "Maybe not," she said, "but I know what it looks like when someone doesn't believe they're worth being cared about." My jaw tightened. That was too close, too true. I tried to step back into the safe space of work. "You done?" I asked, a little rough. Elena blinked like she realized she'd stepped over a line. "Almost," she said quickly. "Just one more." She lifted the camera again, but this time her hands shook a little. "Hold your hands out," she said. "Like you're offering something." I frowned. "Offering what?" "Doesn't matter," she said. "Just trust me." I slowly held my hands out, palms up. I felt stupid, vulnerable. Elena leaned in, and the shutter clicked once. Then she lowered the camera and stared at me for a second too long. "Thank you," she said again, but this time her voice sounded different, like she was thanking me for more than a photo. I swallowed. "You're welcome," I said, and it came out quieter than I meant. The rain eased into a softer drizzle. The yard looked washed clean. Elena tucked the camera under her arm, then glanced at my paint bucket and the half-finished fence. "Do you want help?" she asked. I almost laughed. "You ever painted a fence?" She smiled. "I paint with light," she said. "How hard can paint be?" I should have said no. It was faster if I did it myself. Cleaner, less complicated. But something in me wanted her there. Wanted the company. Wanted the sound of her voice, while my hands did what they knew. So I handed her a spare brush. "Don't drip it everywhere," I warned. Elena took it like it was a prize. "Yes, boss," she said, and her smile flashed bright. We worked side by side along the fence line. The air was cold, but the movement kept me warm. Elena painted slowly at first, careful and focused, like she didn't want to mess up. She kept glancing at my hands, like she couldn't help it. "You're watching again," I said, trying to sound annoyed, but failing. Elena's cheeks warmed. "Sorry," she said. I've spent my whole life looking at people through a lens. It's strange to see someone and not want to hide behind the camera." Quote, that made me pause with my brush mid-stroke. "You hide behind it?" I asked. Elena's smile faded a little. "Yeah," she admitted. "It's safer. People can't hurt you if you're the one framing them." I nodded slowly, because I understood that too well. We painted in quiet for a while. Just brush strokes and dripping water, and the distant sound of a bird somewhere in the pines. Then Elena spoke again, softer. "I'm not here for vacation," she said. I glanced at her. "What do you mean?" She kept her eyes on the fence post. "My parents think I needed a break," she said. "But the truth is, I couldn't breathe in Denver anymore. Not after." She stopped. "After what?" I asked before I could stop myself. Elena's hand tightened on the brush. Her voice came out low. "After I realized I married the wrong man," she said, "and I stayed too long trying to convince myself it was fine." My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. Elena swallowed, blinking hard like she hated that her eyes were getting shiny. "I left him 2 months ago," she admitted. "And everyone keeps telling me I'm brave. But I don't feel brave, I feel empty." The drizzle turned into silence between us, heavy and real. I wanted to say something smart, something comforting, but words weren't my thing. So I did the only honest thing I could. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my worn work gloves, and held them out to her. "You're not empty," I said. "You're just quiet right now, like a room after the furniture's gone." Elena stared at the gloves like they were a gift. Then she laughed softly, watery but real. "That's the most construction worker comfort line I've ever heard," she said. I shrugged. "It's all I've got." Elena's eyes stayed on mine. "It's enough," she said. And the way she said it made my heart do something unfamiliar, like it wanted to believe her. We finished the last fence post just as the clouds split and the sun pushed through. The wet cedar glowed warm, and the world looked brighter than it had all day. Elena set her brush down and wiped her hands on her jeans. Then she looked at me and asked, almost like she was scared of the answer. "Aiden," she said, "can I take one more picture?" I blinked. "Of my hands?" Elena shook her head, slow. "This time," she said, voice soft, "of you holding mine." For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. The sun had just broken through the clouds, the fence posts still shining wet, and Elena stood there with paint on her fingers, and that camera hanging from her neck like it belonged to her more than her own breath. "Of me holding yours?" I asked. Elena nodded, but her eyes didn't look playful anymore. They looked nervous, like she was stepping onto thin ice and praying it would hold. "Just one," she said, "if you're okay with it." I should have said no, not because I didn't want to, because I did. My whole body wanted it in a way that made me feel stupid and young. But she was the Whitmores' daughter. This was their property. My uncle trusted me with the job. And Elena was leaving soon. She said she was only here for a couple weeks. Holding her hand felt like building something I couldn't finish. But then she shifted her weight, and her sleeve slid back enough for me to see a faint pale line on her wrist, like an old mark that didn't belong to paint or gardening. Her fingers tightened around the camera strap like she was waiting for me to shut her down. I couldn't do it. So I took a breath and said, "Okay." Elena's shoulders dropped like she'd been holding herself up with pure will. "Okay," she echoed softly. We stood there by the fence, both of us suddenly awkward, like teenagers at a school dance. The yard was quiet except for a drip from the cabin gutter. Somewhere in the pine trees, a bird called once and then went silent. Elena lifted her hand first. Not fast, not bold. Just a slow offer, palm turned slightly upward. My heart thumped hard. I wiped my own hand on my jeans like a fool, even though it was already clean enough. Then I reached out. When our hands touched, it was simple. Warm skin, steady fingers. A small spark that felt too big for the quiet yard. Elena's breath caught. Mine did too. She didn't squeeze. She didn't pull. She just let her hand rest in mine like she trusted it there. Then she raised the camera with her other hand, twisting her body a little to frame the shot. It was clumsy, not because she didn't know what she was doing, but because this wasn't like taking a picture of a mountain or a sunset. This was personal. "You can relax," she said, trying to sound calm, but her voice was shaky. "I am relaxed," I lied. Elena let out a short laugh. "Sure you are." She leaned back slightly, held the camera steady, and the shutter clicked once. Then she lowered it and stared at our hands like she couldn't believe they were real. "Thank you," she whispered. I looked at her, up close. Her eyes weren't just brown. They had little flecks of gold in them, like the sun caught in whiskey. Her hair was still damp at the ends from the rain. Her cheeks were pink from the cold and the moment. "You okay?" I asked. Elena swallowed. "Yeah," she said. I haven't held someone's hand in a long time, not like this." Something tight moved in my chest. "Me neither," I admitted. Her eyes lifted to mine. Really? I nodded. I don't do close, I said. I'm not good at it. Elena's mouth softened. I can tell, she said gently. But you're trying. I didn't know how to answer that, so I looked down at her hands again. Her fingers were slender, but not delicate. She had a small scar near her knuckle, like she'd scraped it and let it heal without fuss. That made her feel more real to me than any polished Denver picture I'd built in my head. Elena's thumb brushed my knuckles once, slow and careful. Not a tease, more like a question. Then, without warning, her dad's voice cut across the yard. Elena! My whole body stiffened. Elena let go of my hand so fast it was like we'd been caught stealing. The warmth disappeared instantly, leaving my palm empty and cold. Mr. Whitmore was walking down the garden path from the main house. He wore a fleece jacket and nice boots that had never seen mud. He looked around the yard with the same calm face he always had when he checked on the job. His eyes landed on Elena first, then on me, then on the fence. Looks good, Aiden, he said, polite as ever. You're making fast progress. Thank you, sir, I replied, voice steady even though my heart was pounding. Elena shifted beside me, suddenly very still. Her camera hung at her chest like a secret. Mr. Whitmore smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't realize you were helping, he said to Elena. Elena forced a light tone. Just painting, she said. I was bored. Mr. Whitmore nodded like he accepted that, but he glanced at her hands, paint on her fingers, a smudge on her jeans. Then his eyes flicked to the camera. You taking pictures again? He asked. Elena's fingers curled around the strap. Yeah, she said. Just the cabin, the fence. I want to remember it. Mr. Whitmore looked at the fence again. Your mother will like that, he said. Then he turned back to me. Your uncle said you'd be wrapped up by the end of the week. Yes, sir, I said. Just some touch-ups left. Quote, Good, he replied. We appreciate your work. He started to walk away, then paused like something else crossed his mind. Elena, he said, voice casual. Your mother wants you inside. She needs help with some boxes. Elena's face changed for half a second. Not anger, not fear. Something like being pulled back into a role she didn't choose. Okay, she said. Mr. Whitmore left without another word, heading back toward the main house like he hadn't felt the tension he just dropped into the yard. Elena stood there for a moment, staring after him. Sorry, she said quietly. He's always watching, even when he's being nice. It's fine, I said, but my throat was tight. Elena looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes now, not just warmth, frustration too. I hate that I did that, she said. Did what? I asked. She pointed toward the path. I hate that I let go of your hand like it was something wrong, she said. Like you're something to hide. My chest tightened. Maybe you should, I said before I could stop myself. Elena's eyes widened. Aiden. I'm not saying that to be mean, I said, voice low. I'm saying it because this is your parents' place and I'm the guy they hired. I don't want to mess up the job. I don't want to mess up your life. Elena's jaw tightened. My life is already messed up, she said. That's why I'm here. I swallowed, trying to keep my head straight. You said you're leaving soon, I reminded her. Elena hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. I told my mom 2 weeks because it sounded reasonable, but Denver feels heavy right now. I nodded slowly, the truth settling in my gut. If she stayed, things got complicated. If she left, things got worse. Elena took a step closer, her voice softer. I don't want a big thing, she said. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm just asking you not to treat this like it's nothing. It's not nothing, I said, and it came out rough. That's the problem. Elena's eyes held mine like she was trying to memorize my face the way she memorized light. I'm going into town later, she said. There's a spot by the river where the mountains reflect in the water. I want to take some photos there. I nodded. Okay. She took another step, close enough that I could hear her breathing. Come with me, she said, after you finish for today. Just for an hour. No parents, no job site, just you. My heart hammered. An hour. 1 hour with her, somewhere private, somewhere real. I should have said no. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why me, Elena?" Elena's face softened, and her voice turned quiet. "Because when I'm with you," she said, "I don't feel like I have to perform. I don't feel like I have to prove I'm okay. I can just exist." The words landed deep. Too deep, I nodded once. "Okay," I said, "I'll come." Elena let out a breath. Relief and fear mixed together. "Good," she whispered. She started to turn back toward the house, then paused and looked over her shoulder. "And Aiden?" she said. "Yeah?" Her gaze dropped to my hands. "Don't wash the paint off," she said softly. "Not yet." Then she walked away, leaving me standing by the fence with wet cedar smell in the air and a promise sitting in my pocket like a weight. I tried to focus on the last touch-ups, but my hands weren't steady anymore. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was my uncle. "You still at the Whitmores?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He hesitated, like he didn't want to say what he was about to say. "Aiden," he said, "I need you to keep your head down on that job. Those people are not like us. You hear me?" My stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" My uncle's voice lowered. "I got a call," he said. "Mr. Whitmore asked me a couple questions about you. Not about the fence, about you." My heart dropped. "What kind of questions?" I asked. There was a pause on the line. Then my uncle said, "He asked if you were the kind of boy who knows his place." The words sat in my ear like a nail I couldn't pull out. The kind of boy who knows his place. I stared at the fence post in front of me, brush in my hand, and suddenly the work felt different. Like every board I'd cut and every nail I'd driven was proof of something they could take away with one phone call. My uncle kept talking, but I barely heard him. "Aiden," he said again, sharper, "you hear me?" "Yeah," I forced out. "I hear you." "Just finish the job clean," he said. "No drama, no getting involved. You do good work, you keep your head down, you move on. That's how you stay safe." Safe? I ended the call and stood there, the paint smell heavy in the cold air. The mountains were bright under the sun, but my stomach felt like a storm. I wanted to pretend none of it mattered, that Elena was just a girl with a camera, that holding her hand was a simple moment that didn't change anything, but my palms still remembered her warmth. By mid-afternoon, I finished the last touch-ups. The fence looked solid. Clean lines, fresh paint. The cabin behind it finally looked like a place someone could laugh in again. I packed my tools slower than usual, not because I needed time, but because I was scared of what came next. Elena had asked me to come with her to the river. Just an hour. No parents. No job site. But now I could feel Mr. Whitmore watching me even when he wasn't there. I wiped my hands on my jeans and tried to breathe. Then I heard footsteps. Elena came down the path from the main house with her camera bag over her shoulder. She'd changed clothes, a simple jacket, dark leggings, hair loose again. She looked like she belonged in a photo, and somehow she still looked like she didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. "You ready?" she asked, like we were going to grab coffee, and that was all. I hesitated. "Elena," I said, and my voice came out rough. She stopped. "What?" "My uncle called," I said. "Your dad called him." Elena's face tightened. "What did he say?" "He asked if I know my place," I said, and the words tasted like metal. Elena blinked, and I watched her swallow hard. For a second, she looked angry. Then she looked tired. "He's like that," she said quietly. "That doesn't make it okay," I replied. Elena took a step closer. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "It's not your fault," I said, "but I need to know what I'm doing here. I need to know what you're doing." Elena's eyes held mine. "I'm trying to breathe," she said. "That's what I'm doing." I felt my chest tighten. "And me?" I asked. "Am I just a break from Denver?" Elena's eyes flashed. "No," she said, quick, then softer. "No, Aiden, you're not a distraction." I searched her face for a lie. I didn't find one, but the fear was still there. "Let's go," she said. "Please, just 1 hour. If you still want to walk away after, I'll let you. I swear." I didn't want to walk away. That was the problem. So I nodded. "Okay," I said. 1 hour. We didn't take my bike. We took her car, a dusty SUV that didn't match the Whitmores' polished lifestyle, like she wanted something normal too. She drove down the winding road that led past pine trees and open fields, the air bright and sharp through the cracked window. At first, we didn't talk. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything we weren't saying. Elena pulled into a small gravel turnout by the river. The water moved fast, cold and clear, cutting through rocks like it had somewhere important to be. The mountains reflected in it like a promise. Elena grabbed her camera and walked closer to the edge. I followed, hands shoved deep in my pockets. She lifted the camera and took a few shots of the water, the light, the way the sky hit the surface. She looked calmer behind the lens, like it gave her a place to stand. Then she lowered the camera and looked at me. "I want to show you something," she said. She unzipped her camera bag and pulled out a small stack of prints. Photos on thick paper, edges clean. She handed them to me. The first one was my hands holding the hammer. The second was my hands on the cedar post. The third was my palms open like I was offering something. The fourth was our hands together. I stared at that last one the longest. The photo caught, the paint on my knuckles, the small scar on my thumb, the way her fingers rested in mine like they belonged there. It looked quiet and true. "You printed them already?" I asked, stunned. Elena nodded. "There's a little shop in town," she said. "I went this morning." "Why?" I asked, my voice low. Elena took a step closer, her eyes glossy in the cold light. "Because I was scared you'd disappear," she admitted. "And I needed proof that this happened, that you happened." My throat tightened so hard it hurt. "I'm not a moment," I said, not even sure who I was saying it to, her or myself. Elena's voice shook. "I know," she said. "That's why this scares me. I don't collect moments like trophies, Aiden. I collect them because they're the only honest thing I know how to keep." I stared at the pictures again. My hands didn't look rough in the prints. They looked steady, like they could hold something without breaking it. Elena reached for the last photo, the one of our hands. "I have to make a choice," she said, quiet. "What kind of choice?" I asked. Elena looked away toward the river. "My parents want me to go back to Denver," she said. "They want me to pretend the divorce never happened. They want me to come back polished, smiling, normal." She swallowed. "But I'm not normal," she continued. "Not right now. I feel like a house after a fire. The frame is still standing, but everything inside is gone." I stared at her. "So rebuild," I said. Elena's eyes lifted. "That's what I'm trying to do," she said. "And when I watched you work, when I watched your hands build something straight and solid, it made me want to build again too." The river rushed behind her like the world urging her forward. "And your dad?" I asked. "He's not going to like this." Elena's jaw tightened. "I'm not asking him to like it," she said. "I'm asking myself if I'm brave enough to stop letting him steer my life." I swallowed. "And where do I fit in?" I asked. Elena stepped closer until there was only a foot of space between us. "You fit where you want," she said. "But I'm not going to treat you like a secret. Not again." I thought about how fast she'd let go of my hand when her dad showed up. I thought about the call to my uncle. I thought about my place. Then I looked at her, really looked at her. Elena wasn't playing a game. She wasn't slumming it. She wasn't bored. She was terrified. And she was still standing here. I took a breath and held out my hand. Elena stared at it for a second. Then she placed her hand in mine. This time, I didn't let go. We stood there by the river with the cold wind brushing our faces and the mountains watching like they'd seen every kind of love story before. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "I want to photograph your hands again," she said. I gave a small laugh. "Why?" "Because I want to remember the moment you didn't run," she said. "The moment you stayed." My chest tightened. "I might still get scared," I admitted. Elena nodded. "Me too," she said. "But we can say it out loud." We stayed by the river until the sun started to dip. When we drove back, the air felt different. Not easy, not solved, but real. We pulled into the Whitmores' driveway just as Mr. Whitmore's SUV rolled in. Perfect timing, like life wanted to test us. He stepped out, looked at Elena, then looked at me. His face stayed calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Elena," he said, polite. "Where were you?" Elena didn't flinch. "Out," she said. "Taking pictures." Mr. Whitmore's gaze flicked to her camera bag, then to me. "With him?" he asked. Voice still even. Elena's fingers tightened around my hand. She didn't hide it. "Yes," she said. The yard went quiet. Mr. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "Aiden," he said, turning to me, "I assume the job is finished." "It is," I replied. "Good," he said. "Then you can go." Elena's eyes flashed. "Dad," she warned. Mr. Whitmore ignored her. He looked at me like I was a tool someone forgot to put away. "I don't want confusion here," he said. "My daughter is going through a phase. She'll be leaving soon." Elena's grip on my hand tightened, like she was anchoring herself. "I'm not a phase," she said, voice shaking but firm, "and he's not a mistake." Mr. Whitmore's calm cracked just enough to show irritation. "Elena, don't embarrass yourself." Elena took a breath. Then she did something that stunned me. She stepped forward, still holding my hand, and lifted her chin. "I'm going to Denver tomorrow," she said, "but not to fix myself for you. I'm going to get the rest of my things. I'm going to sign the final papers. And then I'm coming back here for a while." Her mother appeared on the porch, drawn by the tension. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes moved between all of us like she was watching a storm roll in. "Elena," her mother said softly. Elena's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "I need space," she said, "and I need to stop pretending I'm okay just because it's easier for everyone else." Mr. Whitmore looked like he wanted to argue, but his wife's presence tempered him. "This isn't the time," Mrs. Whitmore said quietly. Elena turned to me then, her eyes glossy. "I don't know what happens after tomorrow," she said, "but I know I want you to be part of what I build next. If you want that too." My heart pounded hard. I thought about my uncle's warning. I thought about knowing my place. Then I looked down at our hands, still joined, paint on my knuckles, her skin warm against mine. Solid. "I want it," I said. Elena's breath hitched. Mr. Whitmore stared at us like he couldn't believe a man like me could say that out loud. But I didn't lower my eyes, because for the first time I realized my place wasn't something he got to decide. Elena squeezed my hand once, quick and steady, and as I walked away with my tools in the truck and the river wind still in my hair, I knew this wasn't the end of the job. It was the start of something else, something I would have to build carefully, one honest moment at a time. And this time, I didn't want to run.